Hey everyone, welcome back to Disney 101. Today I'm going to be talking about Monsters Inc. I was going to talk about Monsters University, but I thought I would start with Monsters Inc. and do Monsters University another time. I was also going to do them in the same video, but then again that would be like 20-minute video. So we're just going to start with Monsters Inc. because it is such an amazing film and lots of people have watched it. It's a Disney classic movie and I think it has tons of life lessons and it's such a touching storyline with tons of humor, which I absolutely love. So if you didn't know, Monsters Inc. was made in 2001, and it shows the amazing talents of John Goodman, who plays Sullivan, and Billy Crystal, who plays Mike. So basically, if you haven't seen this film, I'm gonna talk a little bit about the storyline so you all kind of understand what I'm going through, and hopefully, if you haven't seen it yet, maybe you'll go watch it because of it. And if you have seen it and you haven't watched it in a while, go watch it. Even if you saw it yesterday, go watch it again. It's an amazing film. I love it so much. It's kind of a watch at any time kind of movie. It's just lovely in that way. So basically, it's about a scaring company, Monsters Incorporated, and follows the story of the top scare, one of the top scares, James P. Sullivan. And we kind of learn his background and Mike Wazowski, who is James P. Sullivan's scare assistant and best friend and roommate in this movie. And Monsters University is kind of the prequel to Monsters Inc. So this is kind of at their prime when they're working as like middle-aged monsters sort of thing. So this is their job. James Sullivan is a scarer. He scares the children. That's basically what they do in Monstropolis. They use children's screams as energy, and that's how they, how electricity runs. And at this point in the movie, you kind of get to see that, the electricity's running out. There's lots of, bursts and things like that happen because, children are getting scared less and less because of the monsters, them being adapted to these monsters. So basically, James P. Sullivan and Mike Wazowski have an interaction with a human child named Boo. She's a girl, which is basically forbidden because humans are toxic, children are toxic, and that's what they're taught. So I'm not going to spoil the whole thing, but they have this arch nemesis, Randall, who is also one of the top scarers, so him and Sullivan kind of go back and forth, and there's huge conflicts with that and everything like that. So please go watch it. Now I'm going to talk about a little bit of the significance of characters. So I'm going to start with Boo because I think she's honestly she's one of the most important characters because she kind of drives the story along with Boo. Now, on a more simple term, she just represents fear itself because of course, everyone in Monstropolis, all the monsters, are scared of her and scared of the idea of a child running loose in their city because she is a child and because they're toxic and because they're told they're toxic. So I feel like even though she is representing fear, I just feel like she represents the innocence of the scaring world because honestly, when we first get introduced to the life as a monster, kind of see it's kind of boring, it's kind of dull. They go to work and they scare children, and there's not much innocence left. They're scaring children. That's a scary fact. It'd be frightening for me to know that there was a monster in my closet like yelling, like making me scream like every single night. That's frightening as a child. So I feel like she's kind of like the innocence of that world, and she's kind of like the sign of change within Sullivan. He kind of is very empathetic with her, and she just represents this innocence and kind of helps Mike and Sully realize that scaring children is wrong. She's a young little girl and she's so sweet, she's so innocent, she's such a light character. And when they see that she's terrified of Randall as her monster, that really touches home with them. And I feel like she has a really important role in this movie because she has to portray this innocence even though, you know, she's a child and it's hard to be part of that world, but she makes it seem so easy. And I feel like Mike and Sully can really relate to her in that way, and that's why Sully instantly wants to help her. Moving on to Mike Wazowski. Other than being comic relief, he is definitely known as a rule follower. He has always been one to do all paperwork and do all these things that he needs to do to make Sullivan top scare. You know, he does all the filing, he does all this, all that, and he follows the rules. And as we see in Monsters University, he's just like that. He studies and studies and studies to become a scarer, and that's what he's good at. He's a book smart kind of guy, and he's good at rule following. And I feel like in this movie, he's caught between his best friend's idea of, you know, helping Boo out and kind of, you know, keeping her a secret, or, you know, the rules. I feel like he's choosing between his best friend and rules, and he's really conflicted within himself. He's also conflicted with Celia, his girlfriend, because he's like, I want to tell her, and he finds out on a date with her on their, like, something anniversary, and, you know, he's conflicted between his best friend, you know, this child that he thinks is toxic because that's one of the rules, you know, like, children are toxic, you're not supposed to touch them, not supposed to be around them, and he was terrified, and he's really conflicted with himself, and he just doesn't know what to do. And at the end, we all see that he falls empathetic for her because of what Sully does for her. So I'm going to move on to Sully. Sully, as I said, he's the empathetic one. When he first sees Boo, he's terrified because he thinks she's toxic. But she instantly touches him. You know, she lifts up his tail. And when he kind of realizes, like I'm fine, he wants to keep her a secret so he doesn't lose his job. But he also wants to figure her out. You know, he kind of wants to see what happens with her. Because although he wants to bring her back to her home, he's curious about her. Because she doesn't seem so scary to him. You know, he's so big and huge and scary, and she's not even scared of him. She's a sweet little innocent girl, like, not even a quarter of the size of him. And she's not scared. And he finds that weird. And so, even though she won't go back to her room, he kind of takes his curiosity and lets it roll. He rolls with the dice with that. And I think Sully and Boo have a lot in common. I feel like they just both kind of represent the innocence, because Sully knows what's right. He knows what's morally right, while Michael knows what's, you know, like rule following right. And I think that's really hard for them to follow, and I think Sully kind of understands that he'd rather believe in the innocent than give in to fear, and that's why he's not really scared of Randall beating him half the time, is because he's not scared of Randall. You know, he's just kind of like, I'm gonna win because I'm good. And I feel like Boo doesn't give in to her fears either. You know, we see that at the end when when they run away from Randall and all that, she's not scared anymore. She just doesn't want to be taken by him. Now moving on to Randall. He's just evil. I don't really know how else to explain him, but I feel like Sully takes a lot of risks by being with Boo, by kind of trying to sort of figure her out, and Randall is the huge roadblock in the way of all these risks, because once he finds out that this girl's missing, that one of his main little girls that he scares is gone, he instantly wants to take her. He instantly wants to, make sure he gets the most scream out of her. He is the roadblocks to his risks, and he's a clever guy. I mean, the whole reason why Boo's door was out was because of him, because he made that huge, weird scream I don't even know how to describe what it was, but that was the whole reason why. And once he found out she was missing and he was the one who left that door there, he knew he could be in big trouble. So he is definitely huge roadblocks in Sully's way throughout this entire movie. So I think that's an important part too, because that goes along with one of the lessons that I'll talk about later. Cecilia, she's obviously the love interest of Mike Wazowski. She contributes to his internal conflicts that he has. I feel like Boo, Mike, and Sully all have different things going on in their minds and different conflicts that they face. And I think that's what's extremely important. Boo is conflicted because she's feared to some monsters. She's feared by some monsters, and she represents innocence for others. So she kind of, even though she's a little girl and she's not internally conflicted within herself, she is the main conflict. And the difference between fear and innocence is so huge and wide that it's so hard. It's just unexplainable. And with Mike, his conflict is he doesn't know who's right, and he just wants to be right. You know, he knows the rules. He knows his best friend. He knows they're both trying to do the best thing. He's just confused. And with Sully, he kind of wants the same thing. He wants to feel that innocence again, you know, that he's always had. And I feel like he loses that throughout the movie, and Boo kind of adds to that. Back to Cecilia, she's also comic relief, just like Roz. They're both comic reliefs, and I feel like everyone's sort of comic relief here, because, again, this is a humor movie, even though I'm talking about, you know, like, Boo being stolen, like, all this, like, types of stuff. Like, this sounds like deep, crazy monster stuff, but it's so humorous. They make it so light and fun, even though there is a touching storyline there. There's still tons of humor throughout it, and I think that's what really brings the touching storyline home. I think kind of just, it adds to the innocence of the film, that even though these monsters are trying to scare the heebie-jeebies out of these kids, you know, there's still some humor there. There's still some lightness and airiness to it. So I'm gonna talk about the lessons. There are tons of lessons in these movies, which makes it so hard to talk about. I mentioned before the taking risk one. Sully takes lots of risk with Boo, and that definitely is a life lesson. You know, if you think something is right, you know, stand up for what you think is right, because that's important. That's just something that's extremely important in life that you should always be doing. Of course, that doesn't mean break all the rules because I can. No, that means be smart about what you think is right. You know, have some justice in your life, and you know that scaring little children is not right. But yeah, taking risks. You should definitely take risks in life. Although we all want a safe and, you know, great life, taking risks is spontaneous, and taking risk can be justified. And I think in this movie, particularly when Sully takes tons of risk with Boo, they're all worthwhile. Even though he gets sent to the Himalayas, even though he probably loses his job, he's still going to take these risks because he knows what's right. And that's what's important. Another good one that I also talked about, fears can create innocence in life. That's a huge one. Although we have everyone has their own different fears. You know, some people are afraid of spiders. Some people are afraid of, what are those hole things? I've seen that all around the internet. People are like scared of like pictures with lots of holes. I don't know what that's about. Or you might be afraid of roller coasters, or whatever you're afraid of. Those fears are innocent, and create innocence within your life. You know, everyone has a story behind why those fears are fears, right? I mean, if you're scared of roller coasters, probably because you went on a roller coaster when you were little and you were absolutely terrified, so now you're terrified. Or you're afraid of spiders because one time a big scary spider was in your room and I don't know. I'm not scared of either of those things, so I can't relate. But yeah, fears can really relate back to your childhood, which create innocence. And maybe we haven't seen a touching story within Sullivan and his youth that create these fears that create innocence. But I also think he's not afraid of children. He just scares them because that's his job and he's good at it. I think that's kind of what drives home the idea that, you know, I've seen on comments like, how come he's not scared? He was scared, when she was there because that's what he was told by his boss, like, the toxic, don't touch him. But after a little bit, he's not really scared of her. He just doesn't want to hurt her. We see innocence within Sullivan too, because he doesn't want to hurt her. He doesn't want to scare her. And I'm going a little too far with that one. But again, fears can create innocence. Keep that in mind. Assumptions aren't facts. That's a big one in this. Because, of course, if your boss tells you children are toxic, don't touch them. And you're not gonna do it, right? That's a rule, I guess, and that's not a fact. They weren't toxic. Sullivan was fine. Mike was fine. But assumptions aren't facts. You can assume things about people, but they aren't true. Or they could be, but they aren't exact facts until you get to know the real information. I think it's the worst when people assume things about you and other people and they just aren't true. It's like rumors. Rumors are assumptions, and rumors are just silly little things that don't even matter because they're not really facts. They're just little stories that people like to throw around to, create drama. Assumptions aren't facts. This one's kind of like a little cheesy, gushy one, but teamwork. Teamwork makes the dream work, as they say. Mike and Sully are great together. They are a perfect team, and we see that smack dab in the beginning of the movie when they work so well together and he becomes the top scarer. But as they start to drift because of Boo, we see that neither of their lives are really great. Roz is always mad at Mike for not filling the paperwork, and he gets in so much trouble. And then Sullivan's not doing his job because he's so consumed with the fact that he has to keep Boo a secret and keep her away from everyone. And it just creates so much drama between them and so much conflict between them. When it gets into the Himalayas, you just see them both burst, and it just doesn't really end well for either of them. So, and when we see them come back together and at the end, we see that teamwork is important, and that's hopefully everyone knows that teamwork is better than, anything else. There's no I in team, as they always say. So I'm going to leave you off with a little fun fact after all that depth and craziness that I just talked about. So in this movie, if you know this movie well enough, you know that sort of in the beginning, not really, but like maybe 20, 30 minutes in, we see the first idea that children are toxic. We see it like firsthand that children are toxic. And we see that with George Sanderson. He's the big orange guy with like tan stripes. He's that monster. And when he leaves he's a scarer. He leaves one of the children's rooms and he has a white little children's sock on his back. And his scare assistant, little nerdy guy, he starts saying like 2319, and like all these like CIA and all these like hazmat people like rushing through the windows, rushing through all the halls, and they all like, put him in the shower and shave him, and all that crazy stuff happens, and you're just like, what's going on? Because that's when you learn, oh my god, these children are actually toxic. They actually think that, so they have to have this whole entire squad roll up on them. And anyways, but that scene. If you haven't seen that scene, look it up. It's so funny. Another part of the amazing humor. It's hilarious. So a lot of people ask, what does 2319 stand for? And if you haven't met me, I probably already told you this fact about 5 billion times because I love it so much. I don't know why, but I just think this is the coolest thing ever. So the 23rd, so the series of numbers is 2319. The 23rd letter in the alphabet is a W, and the 19th letter of the alphabet is S. So that's WS, so that's white sock. And he had a white sock on his back. If you don't get it, I'm not going to re-explain it to you, but I think that's so clever. Disney always adds these amazing details in their films, and I love it so much. I think it's so funny. I tell this little hack, this little fact to everybody I know. So I hope you guys learned something today, and I hope it was the 2319 thing I just talked about. But I'm gonna leave you guys off with the idea that please go watch Monsters, Inc. It's an amazing film. After you watch that, go watch Monster University. Even better. Not really better, I like them the same, but they're amazing. Compare. Oh my goodness. But they're amazing, and I think all of you should go watch it. Also, when Mike Wazowski sings in this film, he's amazing. I sing his little, she's out of a hair part all the time. So, sorry, that was really, really cringy, but I hope you guys like and subscribe this video. And please comment what you guys want me to do for other videos. If you want me to do a Monster University in-depth video, let me know. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And also, if you can't see, I have my little Mike Wazowski over here and my little Sully over here. I don't know if you guys saw it the whole time, but I was like trying to like hint to it. I was like, all right. I hope everyone has a nice day. Bye.